Thank you so much for being here, and happy Caregiver Month to everyone. Laura, who some of you know, is a former caregiver, author, grief specialist, and caregiver advocate. So we are really thrilled today. She's going to be talking with everyone here about her story and her journey. And really, what we're hoping is to sort of have a conversation with everyone here about your stories and really hoping to sort of, foster some community and resilience around the caregiving experience. So that's really our goal and intention for today. So Laura, I will pass it over to you.
Awesome. Oh, I always get this like little bit of nerves right before telling my story, even though it's been 4 years. And I'm sure all of you guys on here can relate to that. As soon as you have to say it out loud, it feels a little bit shakier and a little bit more real. But Desiree and Sherry, thank you so much for reaching out to me and having me be a part of this because this means the world to me. I feel like community, Desiree, you mentioned community, is the only thing that got me through this caregiving journey. Does anyone else feel that same way? The importance of community. And I feel like as soon as everybody started to jump into like the chat bar, not the chat, but the faces that were popping up on the side of my screen and you're all saying hi to each other, I just had this very immediate sense that this is a really special community and a place that you all really value. And I know that that was something that I didn't actually have, believe it or not. I have since created it for myself, but I didn't have it when I was going through this. So I am so touched to see that this is here for you guys, and I hope that is serving you really well. And it sounds like Desiree and Sherry, this is such a passion thing for them, and they are really proud of this community that they have created and offered for all of you guys. So my story, if you don't already know it, I'm going to share it quickly and talk a little bit about how I got through this whole journey and where I am at the other side of it, and what resources I have now to share with you guys and what takeaways I can offer. And then I would really love to just open this up for conversation. I'm not here to talk at you. I'm not here to just tell you all about me. I was asked to do that, but that's not my main purpose for being here. And I would love this to be really engaged and really collaborative and really meaningful for everybody. So please ask me anything. I am an open book. I will answer anything. Lori knows this very well. She's known me for a little while. So I'm so happy to see her. Okay, so my story starts with my dad, who, when I was 36, my dad was 62. He was coming up to retirement. We live in Canada. I'm in Ottawa, Canada. And he was very excited about his upcoming retirement. And he started to just get really confused. And his confusion over several months of that particular summer in 2019 just grew and grew and grew. And this might be very familiar for a lot of you. He would put his water cup down and then forget where he put it, or he'd go to put it on the table and he'd put it 6 inches away from the table and it would smash on the floor. And these little things kept happening over the summer of 2019, and our concern just multiplied day after day. And we thought he might have dementia. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. We thought there must be an Alzheimer's or dementia diagnosis coming. He was tested for everything and ultimately diagnosed with burnout by a therapist. I'm not sure how that is an actual diagnosis, but he was literally diagnosed with burnout, told to take several months off of work. He was still working, and to just heal, repair, give himself some time. So he went on sick leave and the problem just continued to get worse. Of course, until one day there were enough events that we took him to emerge and he was diagnosed with a glioblastoma. So at that time, being a 36-year-old, I had never, ever heard of glioblastoma. In Canada, do you guys know the band, The Tragically Hip? Someone has to know the band, Guys, that's like the biggest band in Canada. Okay. So that's how isolated we are up here. So the lead singer of the Tragically Hip, his name is Gord Downey. He had been diagnosed with glioblastoma. That is sort of our Bo Biden. Like, that's our claim to fame when it comes to GBM. What a dumb comment to make, but that's sort of the one person that everyone says, oh, like you, like glioblastoma, like Gord Downey. So that was the diagnosis. We had no idea what this was. We were told that there was going to be a surgery. And I remember being in the hospital room with my dad and my brother and my stepmom, and the doctor saying, it looks like glioblastoma. And we didn't know what this was. but he said cancer of the brain. And cancer of the brain was enough of a jarring phrase to just knock us all off of our feet. And my stepmom left the room crying. I left the room crying. And my brother left the room crying. And when we all came back into that hospital room, my dad was just sitting there very calm and very stoic, as a dad does, baby boomer generation. And he said, nope, we're not going to look too far ahead. We are just going to slay one dragon at a time. And that's going to be the motto that we live by. If they tell us we need surgery, that'll be the dragon we slay. If they tell us that tomorrow I need radiation, then that's the dragon that we'll slay next. So we decided to adopt that mentality and move forward with that motto, which we really liked. My kids thought was great. And we just went through all the motions, as all of you guys know, of going through surgery, had a great resection, and going through radiation. But before we could get to radiation, literally 14 days after my dad's diagnosis, he was now home. It was my 37th birthday. And my parents were divorced. If we haven't already done that, figured that out. My parents were divorced, remarried to other people, and they got along really, really well. And I said to my mom, I'm just going to have dinner with dad on my birthday, if that's okay, because now I know this could be the last birthday I have with my dad. And I'm only going to be 37. I'm not ready to have a dad, not ready to not have a dad at 37. And my mom said, that's fine. So we did our birthday cake here in my house. And while we ate our birthday cake at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because my dad was very confused as to what time it was, my mom suffered a seizure, dropped to the floor, was rushed to the same emergency department, and diagnosed also with glioblastoma. So I now had two parents with GBM, which I'd only now known about for 14 days, two parents who only had a year to live. And being the product of divorced parents, I now had the immense guilt of deciding which one to take care of on any given day. I had decided I was going to be my dad's secondary caregiver. His wife was going to do a fantastic job being a primary, but I really wanted to be there for my dad before my mom's diagnosis. And I had said to my husband, we had three kids under the age of 8. And I said, I'm going to stop work entirely and I'm going to go work or, take care of my dad. That's going to become my job, because if I only have a year, I am going to squeeze out every last possible second of that year that I can get. And my husband, who's a financial planner, had a little bit of like a heart palpitation and then said, okay, we'll do it, whatever we need to do, and we'll recover after. But now I had two parents who only had a year to live. And now I had to decide how to spend that time between my mom and my dad. And luckily for us, they got along very well. But we ended up everything in tandem. I was going to say, you couldn't write this in a book. I literally wrote this in a book, but only because it happened to me. If I'd written it before as some made up story, it would have been unbelievably stupid. We set my parents up on the exact same day to start the radiation with the same doctor. We set them up with the same neuro-oncologist, and they went through their treatment in this really awful, but really beautiful way of doing all of it together in the most parallel form. And it brought our broken blended family back into this sort of one solid unit. And not to romanticize the memory of my childhood where my parents divorced, they divorced for a reason. They didn't always get along beautifully, but they did it for the sake of myself and my brother. They did it for the sake of their grandkids. And when they were diagnosed, their spouses did it for all of our sake. And we just knew, even though we're this, blended family with some resentment and some animosity and some frustrations, we have to show up with love and nothing but love for each other every single day, no matter how we really feel deep down. So everybody did this beautiful job. And because of that, we got these incredible memories for this year that I still had them, of my stepmom walking down the hall with her arm around my mom and guiding her down the hallway. And we'd show up for radiation and we'd say, okay, Dad, you're up. And he'd go in for his appointment. And then he'd come out and we'd be like, okay, Mom, you're in. And then she'd go in for her treatment. And then she'd come out and then we'd all go have lunch. It was the weirdest thing ever, but it was just such a beautiful way to spend just an absolutely nightmarish year. So, gosh, when my mom was diagnosed, my dad came straight to the hospital. He had been home for all of 4 days. And he returned to that hospital so fast. And he stayed there with us every day, the way my mom had come and stayed with us every day while it was my dad in the hospital. He stayed through every surgery. My mom had two surgeries. She had two tumors. And he said, her name was Christine. And he said to her the first day, Christine, I told the kids we're going to slay one dragon at a time. And that's just exactly how we're going to do this. And so it really was a motto that we held on to pretty tightly. When the community heard about this very bizarre, I don't twin brain tumor diagnosis, they stepped up in a huge way. Now, this is my own neighborhood here in Ottawa, and we started to get food dropped off at our door. I would come home and find little gift bags hanging on my doorknob, anonymous. Nobody would ever claim this, which I thought was so interesting. Some days it would have $100 gas gift card. Some days it would have a $5 Tim Hortons gift card, very Canadian of us. But there was always just something. One day it had 8 journals, so I could just write. I had started sort of blogging everything and throwing it onto social media. And I remember my dad one day saying to my mom, he said, Christine, it feels like this community has lifted us up and carried us this entire way. And my feet haven't touched the ground since the day I found out that I had this diagnosis. So we just felt so fortunate in that. We went through coming up to Christmas that year. This is in 2019. My dad had a complication that required a second surgery. And in February of 2020, with now this pandemic looming and approaching very quickly on all of us, my dad required now a third surgery. They had discovered an infection. So he was now surgery number 3. And by the beginning or middle of March is when obviously the pandemic had hit us, and here in Ottawa as well. I think all of us across North America all got hit at the same time. And I had my dad in one hospital and my mom in a separate hospital. She had become quickly chronically palliative. So I was now splitting my time between getting 3 kids ready and dressed in the morning to go to school, and then spending half my day with my mom at one hospital, getting her fed, getting her to physio, and then getting over across the city to the other hospital to spend the afternoons with my dad, getting him up and doing some rehab and physio with him to have him go for walks. He was now into surgery number 4, by the way. And it was just an awful time. And I showed up one day at the hospital and they said, nope, you can no longer come in. Not that many weeks later, I showed up at my mom's hospital and they said, nope, you can no longer come in here either. And I do think it's important to note too, I was actually the primary caregiver for my mom. She was married, but unfortunately her husband is an alcoholic, and just was not going to be able to care for her at all. And so I had taken my mom to live with me during her treatments. And then quickly, like I mentioned, she became palliative and in a long-term care facility, and I spent every single day there. So the pandemic made just a really impossible situation a lot harder and a lot worse. My parents did pass away in 2020 during the pandemic, one in April, my dad in April. And when he died, I knew because he essentially died alone. Now we got to be there when they decided that he underwent 6 surgeries in the end. And when they decided that this infection that they couldn't get to had gotten too deep into his brain, they were going to stop trying and this would be the end. And I got to be there for those last few days, but he was unconscious. He never woke up. He never opened his eyes again. So it was a very unfortunate situation in that COVID sort of stole, I think, a lot of those memories and moments from us. But it also gave me an opportunity to sit beside him at his bedside and read him The Hobbit. We, as kids, my dad read my brother and I The Hobbit. We could only be there one person at a time at this point due to this pandemic rule. But he was now imminently dying. So we could be there one person at a time. And my brother said, I have dad's old copy of The Hobbit. I'm going to read it to him at night. We would share overnights. We would split, like alternate. So my brother would read The Hobbit. And then the next day I would show up and I'd pick up from where my brother left off. And then I'd read it. I didn't do the voices anywhere near as well as my brother or my dad. And then we'd like keep alternating. So it was just really beautiful. I mean, this disease is so difficult, but when you let it, it gives you these opportunities to just soak in these really profound moments that you really never want to have, but some people never get to have. And I felt really blessed that I got to read this book to my dad that he'd read us as children. that I got to sit beside my mom and swipe through, videos of my kids on my phone and keep her up to date. And I don't know, I think those are sometimes the memories that sort of make me feel like this is the way that it was supposed to be. And I'm so blessed that I got to love my parents till the end of their lives and their time. But when my dad did pass away, my mom was still in a hospital and I was still isolated from being able to get to her. And I decided that I was going to fight really hard. And I always joke about this, but it's true. I'm a hockey player. I still play twice a week. I head coach my 12-year-old daughter. I mean, I'm like obsessed with hockey, always have been since I was little. So if glioblastoma is the instigator in hockey, I'm the retaliator, and I was going to come back like full swinging. And I was determined to claw my way back to my mother inside of that hospital, not outside, not from the stupid window. I got to be the first person to do a window visit. And then I got to be the first person to do a 10-foot away garden visit. Absolutely useless. And I was so determined and hell bent to fight my way back to my mom. And I was very lucky that in May of 2020, the hospital called me and said, we want to develop a program to include designated care partners as part of the patient's care team. Will you help us build this program? So I got to work with a hospital here in Ottawa that has 7 different locations, all hospice and long-term care. And we got to create this program. And coming into the end of this summer, with this second wave of COVID looming, I knew I may not be able to roll this out in time to get to my mom. She was not, she was declining very quickly. But I still wanted to stick with it because even if I missed my own mom by a day, and here's the irony, we were rolling this program out on my birthday the following year. So she gets diagnosed on my birthday. A year later, we're rolling this program out on my birthday. And we did it. And I got to spend the last 6 weeks of my mom's life with my mom every single day. And I was so grateful to have been asked to be a part of that. But I advocated and I got really loud and I used my voice. And I would not have been asked if I didn't throw my thoughts and feelings all over social media. Um, so I was fortunate, but I was also willing to, put up a fight and do the work to get there. So um, when my mom passed away in October of 2020, I thought, well, that's it. I've had 2 parents diagnosed with a disease that affects 1 in 40,000 people. I might be slightly off on those numbers, but it's somewhere in that statistical range, 1 in 40,000 people. I started a charity. I wrote a book. I worked for, if you've heard of Rune, and I don't know if anyone has heard of the Rune app. I was their glioblastoma outreach manager. They came to me and offered me a position, and it was so incredible to be a part of building an app. If you don't know Rune, it's an app, navigational app for anyone going through glioblastoma, patient or caregiver. It's really, really helpful. It's a great resource. I will write it down for you guys after. I was doing all the things that I thought God or the universe or whoever would never have given me 2 parents with the exact same brain cancer, located in the exact same spot of their brain, by the way, if they didn't want me to do something with that. And so, oh, thank you, Terry. Um, so I did all the work. I dedicated my whole life to glioblastoma and to building my own charity and to helping caregivers. And in March of, I don't even remember the year now because I'm getting lost, 2023, so a year and a half ago, my husband came downstairs one day and he said, my dad's in the hospital. And I said, what happened? And he says, he's confused and he's slurring his words. And I said, it sounds like he's had a stroke. My father-in-law had some heart problems. And my husband said, I think he has glioblastoma. And I laughed at my husband and I said, he literally can't. It's statistically impossible for your dad to have what both my parents had. And I went to my hockey game that night and I came home and my husband said he has 5 brain tumors. And my father-in-law was then also diagnosed with glioblastoma. He was also set up with the exact same neuro-oncologist, same radiation oncologist. I emailed the neuro-oncologist and said, now we're on a first name basis, and said, hey, you have a new file on your desk. It's our 3rd parent out of 4. We lost my father-in-law just this year in January, also to GBM. Um, and it was just such an altering situation to feel like I have literally done everything. I have literally written the book. I've started the charity. I've worked for the company. I've built the app. What did I miss that I've had three parents go through this disease? I've watched three parents, and I have only chance or the only option for me is to spin that mindset to I have gotten to love three parents through this disease. And I've gotten to spend the last year of three different people's lives with them. We had 7 months, 10 months, and 13 months. But to have the gift of making sure my father-in-law knew that he was so loved and that my mom and dad knew what kind of parents they were to me, and to be able to write them letters and read them those letters in person. That's not an easy thing to do, by the way. I ugly cried. I snotted everywhere. It was not cute. I had my kids, who are incredibly empathetic souls at this point, I will say. They are now 13, 12, and 9. And I said to them about my father-in-law, I said, you know, it would be really amazing for grandpa is if grandpa left this world knowing what impact he had on you. If he knew I taught them this, I instilled their love for golf, whatever it is, like what kind of thing could you tell grandpa about what he's taught you, what you loved about him, what your favorite memories were? And so they each wrote him a letter or a card, depending on their own age related abilities. And we got to send my father-in-law off with that in a way. And I just thought that was an opportunity that not very many people get. I would highly encourage all of you, if you are either caregiving for someone with GBM now, or if you're not, do this for people that are healthy and walking around smiling every single day on this planet in your life, because to be able to say that to somebody and what an impact and what a meaning they have to you in your life is a huge gift. And we do not do that enough. We don't do that enough. And I think from my situation and my experience, what it did for me, and I hope everyone can say this. I wish more people could say this. I really feel like I got to come through that experience with no regrets, not even just very few, literally zero. I don't regret anything. There's nothing I could go, I would go back and I'd sit beside my dying mom in a heartbeat. I'd read The Stupid Hobbit again. I would change my mom's bed sore dressing. I would do it all over again, 1,000,000%. But there's nothing that I wished I had done that I didn't do. I got to say everything. You guys get a chance, hopefully, still to say everything. A friend of mine early on gave me the advice, take all the pictures and say all the things. And I pissed a lot of people off taking all the pictures, but I now have all those pictures, which has been pretty incredible. And I feel very blessed to have had those. So, okay, so that is my overall chronological story that I wanted to share with you guys. I know there's a lot of heaviness in there, a lot of detail in there. I have a daughter being picked up. There we go. Just want to make sure. Okay, we're good. Sorry. Still a mom. I told Desiree and Sherry this is probably going to happen, even though I did my best to set them all up to not be ringing doorbells. But so this is my book. When I wrote my book, the idea for me was that it was going to be a memoir. But what was really cool, it's daughter, embracing the difficult journey of caring for a dying parent. What was really cool is my book ended up being this exercise in having to really pull myself back to day one of hearing the words, your dad has a brain tumor. And what did I say to myself or do, or how did I physically carry myself through that moment? I have watched people come through this journey and go from believing in God to not. Now, this is not my religious view. I'm just giving it a pretty abstract example, but I've watched people lose their faith. I've watched people lose their friends. I've watched people become severely depressed. These things all make sense, by the way. So if anyone's in that camp, I'm not judging. I've watched people physically let their own health go. And I managed to get through three parents with this disease without that. And largely probably because I would attribute that to I still got on the ice every day and played hockey. But it was interesting to go back and really dig and think, well, how did I do that? And what was really cool was that I got to relive a lot of the lessons my parents taught me when I was little. I'm sure all of which I ignored at the time, and to sort of now put the pieces together and realize, oh yeah, they taught me that thing. And then I used that thing to get through, this journey with them and helping them live their best life and know how loved they were until the end of their life. So I'm going to share what I think were the three takeaways. I'm going to share with you guys the three takeaways that I had written out as well in my book, that were the most helpful, but the most tangible, because I can sit here and share my story and that's all great. And there's pieces you'll relate to, and there's pieces you'll go home with, and keep close to your heart. But really what we need as caregivers is like the actual steps, like, cool, now what? Like, what do I actually physically do? So the very first thing that I think is crucially important is to learn to control only what you can. And I know that sounds very like a little bit too simplified, but one of the things that I learned early on, I'm going to circle back here in a second to this whole water thing. One of the first things that I realized I could control, and it was so arbitrary, was how much water I drank. Hopefully, I didn't just lose all of you because I know that sounds so basic. But when you're in the hospital every day caring for somebody or at home, but I'm going to use hospital because that's where I was in the beginning, I was living on a beautiful IV of coffee all the time. It was great. And anytime people show up, nobody says to you, hey, I'm coming in to visit. Can I bring you a bottle of water? Everybody says, can I grab you a coffee? Can I bring you another coffee? So my light keeps doing weird things. So it's probably my parents hovering all around me and messing with me. But um, so I just found anyone that came in the beginning, pre-COVID, when we could have visitors, was bringing me coffee. And one day I think I realized I was like, I'm on coffee 6. This is crazy. No, I'm not sleeping. I'm already anxious and jittery. And the last thing I need is this many coffees in a day. And I woke up one morning with a long hospital day ahead of me, knowing my mom was either recovering from surgery or needing surgery. And I filled a glass of water while I waited for my morning coffee to percolate. I filled a glass of water and I chugged that glass of water back so fast. I think I almost blacked out. And then I realized, man, I am severely dehydrated. Who knew? I'm severely dehydrated. And it just sort of hit me in that moment that I could do so much better. Like I really could do better. And you know what I can control is I can control how much water I drink. And I filled a water bottle and I promised myself that every day I would take that water bottle with me and I would drink that whole damn water bottle and then I would refill it and I would just do better for myself. And I always reminded myself that my parents deserved more from me. I wanted to make sure that my physical health was good, that my mental health was good. And I thought about if I were in a hospital and I needed care, a lot of care, would I want the nurse that looks like she's about to drop dead of a heart attack and is probably just finished a smoke break and is maybe huffing and puffing and looks malnourished? Or would I want the one that looks like they could physically and mentally, I don't even mean big muscle physically, but just that they were calm, collected, healthy, grounded? Who would I want to give me care, to get me out of bed, take me to the bathroom, take care of my staples and my stitches? I got to be that for them. I need to be that for my parents. And so I started to really take seriously the littlest, tiniest things, because there was no way that I was joining a gym and going to spas and all that stuff. And let's be realistic, but I could control how much water I drank. I could control my own mindset as best I could. I would get to the hospital and sit in my car. I would close my eyes before getting out and take 10 deep breaths. It felt like a 4-hour event. It was not, but I would just take 10 deep cleansing breaths in through my nose, out through my mouth before getting out, because I never knew what I was going to walk into. And you guys don't always know what you're going to walk into when you're living in the hospital life. Sometimes even when you get home to a loved one that you're caring for with glioblastoma. And that level of unpredictability can be very overwhelming. But if I could calm myself by just taking a few deep breaths, and if I could just know that I'm like at least very hydrated, it's a small thing, but at least I know that I'm getting lots of water. And we don't do that in our usual day-to-day life. Those were really small things that I could control. I could also control what I was eating. I drove home one day and bought a marshmallow pie at Harvey's. It was probably one of my lowest moments, to be really honest. I was starving, and we don't make right decisions when we're starving. And we stop at fast food places and we just buy horrible things that should not exist in the food world. And I remember eating that marshmallow pie and just wanting to cry. Like that was disgusting. I'm sorry if you guys love Harvey's marshmallow pie. I don't even think they make this junk anymore. But what a way. I should have just taken my $7 and put it in the bottom of the garbage. But it was just such a reminder that, if I had taken 5 minutes this morning and thrown like baby carrots in a plastic bag, that wouldn't even take 5 minutes. I would have been a lot better off. So I could do better there. I'm not making steak and potatoes, but I could throw some veggies in a bag. I could chop a few extra things. I can eat food that is colorful food, not colorful wrappers. And I could do a little bit better in my eating. So those are small things, but they're huge things at the end of the day. Drink more water, eat a little better, take some deep breaths. Very small things that you can actually control. I also found it was very helpful to eliminate clutter. I am sure that you guys can relate to this. I came home one day and so by trade, I'm a horticulturist. I'm a landscape designer and horticulturist. I came home one day and my parents were diagnosed in September of 2019. My own planters were like dying and just looking really bad. And I remember just thinking they were speaking of water, they were so dehydrated because I hadn't watered them. They were all just limp. I mean, this is like a absolute embarrassment for for a well-known container designer and horticulturist in Ottawa. And I remember walking up my walkway, looking at them and thinking, I want to rip all of those out and throw them in the garbage. I don't even want planters. I don't want to have to water anything. So the permission I gave myself to just declutter, throw things out, everything seems a lot less valuable when you're going through this journey, right? Like the little material things don't seem anywhere near as important anymore. So clear your space and give yourself space to really take those deep breaths and be in that moment without the actual physical cluttering up your mind at the same time and your mental space at the same time. The second one, that all that falls under control what you can. The second big takeaway for me was learning. I feel like I'm going to get reactions here. Learning to accept help. Does anyone feel like they actually are doing that well? Have gotten really comfortable? Not Liz at all. No, maybe Liz, maybe. Yeah, it's tough. And I know, we live in this society where we stoically want to do everything on our own. I think as moms, we really feel like that. I'm imagining, and I could be way off base. So guys, if I'm off, just please nod your head at me. I feel like men really feel that way and have a hard time accepting help. I'm looking at all the men, none of them are responding. Yeah. Um, it was a humbling lesson, but I think it was single-handedly the biggest lesson that changed the journey for me in a lot of ways. So I had a friend show up one day at my house and she said, I'm going to pick your daughter up for a play date. And when I come to get her, I'm going to take your laundry. She lives down the street. And I said, absolutely not. No, that's disgusting. You're not taking my laundry and washing my dirty clothes. But thank you. And this was right in the very beginning. This was my mom had just come in to my home. We've moved everything around in the house to accommodate her. She's still freshly stapled and 2 incisions and she said, Laura, uh, I don't have another way to help you. Everyone's making you casseroles. I don't want to make you a casserole. Just let me do your laundry, please. I said, okay, fine. So she showed up and I ran upstairs and I took out all the socks and underwear out of, and bras, like out of the laundry basket. And I brought her this like nice basket of like towels and hoodies. I was like, here you go. And she just looked at me and she said, you have 6 people living in this house. There is no way that this is all of your laundry. I'm going to take this to the car and I'm going to come back and I want another basket of laundry. And it was just this moment that switched everything for me where I thought, okay, Laura, like suck it up, put your stuff in there and just give it to her. She's not going to not love you because she washed all of your family's underwear. And the next day she came back, or later that day, with these 2 or 3 baskets of laundry folded. You guys, to have my laundry folded for me was just such a beautiful gift. Clean, folded, fresh, my daughter intact. She said, thank you for letting me do that. And I was like, how are you thanking me? I should be thanking you. And she said, because I have not known what to do. And I have been standing here for 2 weeks watching you go through this and having no idea how to show up and help you. And this is all I could think of. So thank you for just letting me show up and help you. And it was a really big eye-opening lesson in the fact that we are human beings. And by design, we want to help each other. We really want to show up for each other. We don't always know how, and we might not all do it in the exact same way. But I started to become very comfortable with if my neighbors just cut my lawn, if I got home and my lawn was cut, I would not dare go over there and say, hey, you didn't have to do that. Thanks. I just said, thanks. That was so helpful. And you know what happened? I do it every week because I was so grateful and they felt so great about themselves. So, learning to accept that help is not only going to be insanely helpful for you, but there's this whole ripple effect that happens where the person that actually got to show up and care for you as a caregiver, they feel better. And then they are going to do great things for other people. And that's just going to keep spreading and spreading, which is pretty magical. This morning, I went to Starbucks and do you guys have red cup day at Starbucks? Is that happening today? Okay. So if you buy a holiday drink menu today only at Starbucks, so like when we're done this call, like go, you get a free red reusable plastic cup. Super cute. So I was there today and apparently I can't say this too loud. My kids are home, but I have 3 kids. They gave me 2 cups because I'd ordered 2 things. And I said, well, this is no good. I can't come home with 2 cups and 3 children. That's just going to be a nightmare. So I went back to order something else, but it had to be a holiday drink. I thought I'll just grab gift cards. No, it had to be a holiday drink. And I didn't want a second latte. I mean, they're delicious, but let's be honest, I don't need 2 sugary lattes. So I went on a Being Neighborly group on Facebook in my area. And I said, hey, first person to comment on this who needs a pick me up today is getting a free Starbucks. Who's it going to be? So somebody reached out and they said, thank you so much. I've had this awful morning. I've been crying all morning. Like, I would never say yes to something like this. So not only did I get to go deliver a holiday drink to a stranger and get my red cup, she cried and cried and cried. She wrote this whole thing on Facebook thanking me. We have now become friends, unless she's a psychopath and I just haven't figured it out yet. But there were 107 comments on my little tiny post, and it was not people saying, pick me. It was people saying, this is amazing. No, I want to go do something nice for somebody. And it was just so cool to watch this whole ripple effect thing happen over just me bringing this coffee to this stranger today. And it came back, I was thinking about this talk and I thought it just comes back to people want to help you and letting them is a gift to them. It's a gift to you and it's a gift to them. I heard this is not my hack, so I won't steal it, but someone had told me one day that they write anything they need on Post-it notes. So as a caregiver in their darkest, hardest days, if they were like, oh my God, I got to pick up that dry cleaning, or oh my goodness, we're completely out of whatever, or I need to get a cake for my son's birthday on Thursday. I don't want to forget. Write it on a Post-it note. This woman stuck them all over her wall at her front door. So when people showed up and they were like, what can I do? How can I help? She would literally like pull a Post-it note off the wall and hand it to them. Say, here, whatever this one is. I need bacon. I need my laundry picked up. I need my grass mowed. I need my snow shoveled up here. And I thought that was just a brilliant way to get the message to somebody because they're going to do whatever you ask them to do. These people really want to help you and they're going to do, whether you're grieving or you're caregiving and grieving, they're going to do whatever you ask them to do. And if they can't, you're going to give them another Post-it. But when we're in a position of being so weighed down by all of our fear and our anticipatory grief or our grief and our thoughts and our emotions, we are not always in a place where we have the capacity to answer that question. Have you guys had someone say to you, what can I do to help? And you think, I have no idea. That's usually our answer, right? I don't know. I don't know. Like, thanks. Maybe you know that they mean it. Maybe you think they're just throwing it out as like a nice fluffy offer, but we don't always have the capacity to say, oh, no, that's great. I have a spreadsheet. Let me tell you where I need help. We usually are thinking, I have no idea. So write those things down, whether you do the Post-it on the door I actually do know someone who did create a spreadsheet and then he assigned people. He did like a shared Google sheet and then he would like assign people in his family or anyone that said, I'd love to help. Let me know how I can help. So learning to accept help is just, yeah, it's a big, big deal. And then number three, so control what you can, learn to accept help. And then number three is this, what I call the self-care myth. I don't know how you guys feel about the term self-care. I mean, it's overdone. It's way past being cool. It's actually just quite annoying, to be honest. And anytime anybody would say, are you taking time for you? Make sure you take time for yourself. It became just frustrating. It feels like you are almost expected to add to your to-do list. Hey, take care of your family member that is sick. And don't forget their chemo pills, because wow, the guilt of like forgetting one pill on you. We don't need to talk about what that would feel like. And make sure that they get to their appointment, except don't forget that they're actually not going to get up and be any help in that area because they're maybe a little bit different and a little bit altered cognitively. And that's a whole thing. And but on top of all that, and your job and your life and your children or whatever you already had going on, make sure you take time for yourself. Go have a spa day. Like this is not realistic. It's not happening. And I went to my therapist one day and I said, um, what is this supposed to be? Like, how do I do self-care? I can't even do my mom's care. I'm putting my whole life into caring for my mom and dad. How do I fit me into that? And she said, what's your quietest time of the day? Or maybe your favorite time of the day. And I said, my two parents at the different hospitals at this point, and I had a lot of therapists during this process. And I said, I dropped my mom off, or I dropped my mom, but I dropped my kids off at school. And then I go and I get Tim Hortons. I go pick up a coffee. I probably shouldn't, didn't have the income, wasn't working, but yeah, whatever. I'm life short, I'm getting coffee. And then I have about a 20-minute drive to the hospital. And I love that 20-minute drive because it's quiet. There's no one in the car. I can listen to the radio or I can shut it off. I can just take some deep breaths. My eyes stay open. I can sip my coffee while it's hot as a mom of three. Like that's not happening in my house. I find my coffee in the microwave at dinner every single day. And I just love that time. And she said, then that is your self-care. You don't need to add. You need to just reframe how you're looking at the time you're already spending day to day. I see someone in the car right now listening to this conversation. That can be your self-care. That can be your time for you. It doesn't always have to look like going to get a manicure or going to get a facial or going to have a nap. Those things are amazing. Fit those in if you can fit them in. I also learned that for me, and I want to give you guys that are still caregiving this permission, and those of us who are maybe on the other side of this will probably have to caregive again at some point in our lives if we're so lucky, dare I say, that sometimes picking your loved one can also be your self-care. I don't know if that makes sense, but what I mean is I very often have people say, why don't you take a day away? Your mom will be okay if you take a day away. You don't need to be there every day. Why don't you send your aunt or ask somebody else to go and, just spend a day with your kids or just spend a day on yourself or just spend a day with your friends. And I always felt like if I did that, I'd probably have a great time, but my heart would always be in that stupid hospital room. I want to be with my mom, or I really want to be with my dad because someday, like right now, today, talking to you guys, I don't have a mom or a dad or father-in-law to be with. And while they're there, I wanted to be with them. And I almost would feel guilty picking my parents. And I had to remind myself and give myself permission that it's actually okay. That's my self-care today, is I just want to sit by my mom. Even if I have nothing to do and I'm not needed there. She was nonverbal for the last 10 months of her life. I just want to sit there and be there with her. That's how I'm going to love myself today. I'm going to pick what I know in my heart is going to be the best thing for me and not the best thing that Desiree thinks I should do or Sherry thinks I should do. But really holding on to the integrity of knowing I will not regret spending this time with my mom, but I might regret not. And so flipping that lens on self-care and just really listening to what you need each day in your own heart, I think is Really, really important. It is really difficult to tune out the noise. It really is. And creating an environment for yourself that is I guess relaxing. I don't know if that's even the right word, but supportive and healing. Lose the toxic people, lose the toxic opinions. My sister-in-law, when I was pregnant for my first daughter, she gave me a card that said, and I still have this card, and my daughter's 13. It said, do what comes naturally and ignore the rest. And it was some of the best advice I'd ever gotten. And it was about being a mom, but I really applied that to being a caregiver because everybody had an opinion. Oh, your mom should not be doing radiation. It's just going to kill her faster. Have you checked out this article? Did you see Cyberknife? Like everybody had an opinion. You let your mom have a glass of wine? That was rare, but yes is the answer. But that would be judged. If my dad ate sugar, it would be judged. If he enjoyed a beer, it would be. Everybody was judging anyway. And so I really stuck to that saying that my sister-in-law, that gift that she gave me 13 years before, of do what comes naturally and ignore the rest. Because if I listen to me, I won't regret that. I won't have regrets at the end. If I listen to somebody else, I'm going to wish I had stayed true to me. And I needed to show up as a caregiver and as a daughter in a way that I was proud to show up as. And this many years later, I am so proud of myself and the way that I showed up for all three of them. I want to tell you about the Slay Society, about my charity. Lori is very familiar with it. I started this charity in 2020, and my parents were actually both still alive. And the reason I did it is I have made it very clear that I was very loud on social media. I was very public with our story. I was comfortable doing that. Not everybody is going to be comfortable doing that. My way is not the right way. It was just my way. And I was getting these bags of gift cards left at my door, like I mentioned earlier. And one day, my stepmom said to me, I said, I just got this incredible gift card. Listen to this one from Bauer Hockey. Like, how excited do you think that made me? Canadian female hockey player, like all my life. And I was just so excited about that. And I said, Bauer chose us, and they gave me this $500 gift card. And my stepmom said, well, that must be nice. Nobody's giving me gift cards. And, her venom was, it is what it is. But I realized it's because you're not being loud and nobody knows you need help. If they don't know you need help, how are they supposed to show up and help? How are they supposed to know to show up and help? And that doesn't mean she should now be putting all of her feelings and fears and vulnerabilities on social media, but it means who is going to step up and help the people like her? I will. Because if she's not going to go out and ask for it, and not everyone's going to be comfortable doing that, somebody's got to still show up for those people. And so I decided to start a charity called the Slay Society, SLAY, after my dad's motto, slay one dragon at a time. And my charity would and does and will continue to raise financial and emotional support for glioblastoma caregivers. And I wanted that to be very specific to glioblastoma because clearly my life is happening in a way that would navigate me specifically into glioblastoma. But it was the journey I knew, and it was the trials I knew. And I knew financially what a toll it took. I knew mentally and emotionally what a toll it took. I knew what a toll it took on your social life, on your well-being, on your sleep, on your nutrition, obviously, because I was eating marshmallow pie. I just knew the journey so well. And I really wanted to create something that supported people who were or would be in the exact place that I had been. Now, again, I'm recognizing that a lot of people in here are spouses or could be siblings or hopefully not, but could be parents to glioblastoma patients. And I'm only speaking from a daughter's perspective and a daughter-in-law perspective. But I felt that it was important for me to stay in that lane of glioblastoma and take care of those caregivers. So we offer once a week support groups as well. They're free on Zoom, and that's how we provide the emotional support. We do once a week for caregivers and once a week for grief and loss. And then we raise money. And the way that looks quite directly from us as Slay Society is our financial donations right now do stay in Canada. We are going to open a 501c3 But right now, the financial piece is in Canada. These support groups are global. We raise $2,500 for each caregiver, and we donate that $2,500 to each caregiver in way of gift cards. And it's all a list of gift cards that they've personally curated for themselves. So we put them on a website where they can pick through hundreds and hundreds of every commonly named store you can think of, restaurants, gas stations, you name it, and they can curate their own list. So they could literally say, I want $200 for Lululemon. This has happened. And 250 for coffee and 1,000 for groceries and this much for whatever. And it's just there's zero judgment from us. We are removed from it. And then as soon as they're done their list, we process it and it all gets delivered to them within 5 business days right to their door. So it's a very seamless, hands-off process that makes it, I wanted it to be as fast and easy and clean for the caregiver as possible because I didn't want them to have to submit forms or medical stuff or prove anything to me. I vet everybody personally. So that's what we do with the Slay Society. And then you'll see me in a lot of places because I do sometimes run support groups for the glioblastoma research organization. I think that we talked about community at the top of this, but the ability to, yeah, just the ability to create this giant community. And this is what this glioblastoma research summit was just so great for, was bringing, medical professionals and patients and caregivers and advocates and Emily from ABTA, like bringing all these people together into one place was so powerful. I have said this a million times. This is the last family you ever want to belong to, but it really is the best community to be a part of. So, okay. So that's it. I am going to wrap myself up. I'm going to have some more water. Everyone else should do the same. And then I would love to just chat with all of you and get to know you. I don't think I would worry about it right now. Just show up every day for your husband in whatever way he needs and you need. And I think, whatever advocacy you feel inclined to do, it could be none. By the way, God,
Mhm.
no one's obligated to go out and use this to do anything. I see more people run away from glioblastoma
Yeah.
afterwards than I see turn and do something with it. And that's not a bad thing, right?
Mhm.
It's not everybody's journey. It had to be mine. I was slapped in the face with it 3 times. To be honest, if my dad was the only person diagnosed, I probably would not be sitting here talking to you right now. I think this is your time to just show up for him however he needs and however you need. And everything that you do, like how do I want to word what I'm wanting to say? I don't know. Everything that you're going to do is going to be the right thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but it really is going to be the right thing. And there will be opportunities for advocacy later. This isn't what you're getting at, but if ever at any point it was like a need for some financial support or just some group support like you have here, there are so many ways to reach out for that are private. Sometimes we really put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and people would say to me, "What should I do when I go to the hospital?" Maybe it's boring, it's uncomfortable to just sit there if there's nothing going on. But I think you just really need to just show up. And sometimes it might just be literally like walking in the door or sitting beside him on the couch or whatever it is. But I don't know if that answers your question. I just don't want you to feel like you have to do any more than what you're doing, because what you're doing is exactly what you need to do. Unpopular opinion, but my my parents weren't all that they were fairly private. And my dad, you'll see a lot less photos of my dad floating around the internet than you will of my mom, because I had care of my mom. But my mom, this sounds terrible. Oh my gosh, why am I saying this out loud? My mom didn't have a voice. I felt like my mom's soul,
Mhm.
whatever existed higher than and bigger than my mom on this earth, it wanted to create change. It wanted
Mhm.
to do something like deep in there. Vanity and ego might have kept her on this earth saying, "Oh my, I don't want people to look at me like that. I don't look like I used to look.
Yeah.
My hair is this, my skin is whatever." Of course, I probably feel that way too. Not now, but before. But that was ego and vanity. And
Mhm.
so I chose to do what I thought was going to be the best thing for the people going forward with his disease and share the pictures and the videos of her that I was comfortable with. She might not, between all of us, she might not have been very comfortable with that
Mhm.
if she had a voice to tell me not to do it. But I felt like she didn't know and it wasn't hurting her and it was helping others. And her soul would have wanted that down the
Mhm.
road. So there might come a day at some point where he
Yeah.
just feels comfortable or you have
Mhm.
an opportunity. But it sounds like if you're just in chemo, this is still pretty, well, you're 2 years. You're right in
Yeah.
the thick of it. Yeah. It's a later thing for you. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to offer you, hopefully it's a bit of a gift. It's a thought that someone recently shared with me, and I found it so immensely helpful. And again, I want to be really, really cognizant of the fact that I'm not doing this as a spouse, and this would be such a different conversation. And I can't imagine the position that you guys are in doing this as spouses. Um, but I recently talked to a very good friend who lost someone to GBM. And I said, and I hope this relates or resonates. I said, I feel so lost, even 4 years later. I said, I feel so lost just not knowing what to do with myself. That sounds a little crazy coming from me after I'm like, yeah, I wrote a book and I did the charity and I did the thing. I still just feel like completely like I don't like someone spun me and I don't know what direction I'm supposed to go in. And I said, it's really hard to go from having the identity of being a caregiver to no longer being a caregiver. And you feel like, and I can imagine as a husband, you feel like you've lost two parts of your identity. You've lost the spouse part and you've lost the caregiver part. And he said, well, Laura, I'm still a caregiver to my dad, but his dad has died. And I said, well, how are you still a caregiver to your dad? And he said, I'm a caregiver to his legacy. And I will be a caregiver to my dad's legacy every single day until the day I die. And that was just, I felt like such a profound way to look at it because it gave me permission to be like, right, it still matters. My parents still matter. I don't know if that helps put any like, um, container or support around you, but keep that in mind that you are still caregiving for her memory, for her honor, for her legacy. And whether that means you save a cat from a tree or open a vet clinic someday, or I don't know, there's going to be sometimes it's just the littlest things, right? That we have to find and think, I sometimes have to think, my dad would be so proud of me for that. My mom would be so proud of me for that. And sometimes those are the little things that I think we just really need to hold on to. Oh, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I absolutely did the opposite. And I showed up in like jogging pants and unshowered. Maybe it worked, and that's why all the gift bags landed on my doorknob. But but I remember my stepmom at the very end of my dad's life on like his last day, I said, "You look so good. Like, why do you look so great all the time? And I look like this." And she said, "Because this is how, no, my dad loved her regardless, but she made a comment, something about like, this is how he always saw me, and this is how, he's used to me, and I'm going to keep showing up. This guy hadn't opened his eyes in 9 days. And she's like, I'm going to keep showing up as my best self for him. And it really made her feel empowered. And it
Yeah.
encouraged me to go home and take a shower and then return with like, I had my hair blow dried. I remember the last picture I posted of myself before my dad died that later that night. Like I looked so damn good. I was so happy to have a photo of myself. I really like looked and felt really good. So anyway, that's very vain, but I really like that perspective though, because that's you have to do what works for you, right? And what makes you feel empowered sometimes. Hmm. I don't know how you mean that question. But okay, but let me give you my answer. I was very fortunate to be with both my mom and my dad when they actually passed. And when my dad was diagnosed and we went to the neuro-oncologist for the very first time, if this is really a triggering thing for anybody and you're like, no, I'm not there, I'm not doing it, like feel free to mute me or pop off or whatever. But I'm going to go there. And I hope that's okay. So I remember my dad going to the neuro-oncologist that first time, and I went with him, and he said, "What will it feel like when I die?" And as somebody who was not prepared at all, me, the daughter, not prepared to hear that information in any way, shape, or form, I just remember my heart leaping out of my body, and I got so scared. I mean, I could feel my heart literally like it was trying to escape, and it was ringing in my ears. And I thought, nope, nope. And I think I was even like this, like rocking, like I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. And the doctor said, you are going to just sleep more. It's going to be peaceful. You're going to just sleep more and more. And that's it. It's a very peaceful process, transition. And I always sort of held on to that, like, that better be how it goes. And I have to say that it's such a layered question, but my parents' transition or passing was both so incredibly beautiful. And my dad passed away when he was sleeping, and I was sleeping, but I was the only one in the room with him. Um, and I don't know. I mean, we're going to get into so many things here, but I later heard through somebody who feels like they connect with people on the other side that he purposely just wanted to not make it a big deal. Wait till I was asleep, didn't want to, and just slipped on to the next thing for him. And it was just this beautiful process. And with my mom, it was incredibly spiritual. And I am so grateful that I walked out of that room crying and immediately got on social media. I think something's wrong with me, and made a video about how beautiful my mom's passing was. I was so moved by it. I really, really was. And I just felt like for the rest of my life, I will just be so grateful forever that I got to witness that. I wanted so badly to be the one with my mom. I wanted so badly to be the one with my dad, and I was for both. And it has changed my perspective of dying 1,000 times over. I am not scared of dying. Now, I'm saying that, and I'm not sitting here with glioblastoma, but my thought is I don't have a fear of the death process anymore. I've watched all three of them transition. I've watched all three of them pass right in front of me, my grandmother as well, years before. And I just think it's such an incredibly moving thing. And they're going on to something else. And I don't know. It wasn't scary at
Yes.
all. Good. I'm glad that you found it cathartic for you. I know it's not for everybody, but sometimes it really is I looked at it for me, this isn't you, but I looked at it for me as a selfish almost way to get support back since I didn't have a mom and dad to give me the support during their journey. If I put it on social media, I was spreading the message, I was advocating, I was informing family without having to send 72 different texts, but I was also then getting back the support that I just really needed because I didn't have my mommy to give it to me. So I hope that it gives you that at the same time too.
Just wanted to again just extend such a huge thank you, and thank you almost feels like not enough for you, Laura, and also for everybody who showed up today. I know time is very precious, and we are so grateful that you chose to spend your afternoon with us today and in community with each other.